Well, hello, hello. We're back for another Wet Ink Wednesday, and I'm continuing to talk to people who are Never Going Home contributors as we finalize those books. So I had to call up my friend Atwas to bring them back on to talk about Never Going Home. Atwas, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It is nice to be back and be invited back. Thank you.
Well, of course, of course. Uh, I mean, in like sheer volume of like content, in measures of like content produced on that other people can go be part of. Like I mean, I don't know how many stack hours and hours and hours some players have racked up at like private games, but like
Mhm.
because you did the critical failsafe thing, you've got like, I mean, what is it, like 17 hours or something like that of like, because it's 12 episodes and they're each like 2.5 hours. So like, what's the math there? Like, how many?
Yeah.
You've got a lot of public you have the most public display of it never going home love that I'm aware of, is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So yeah, of course we would have talked to you some more.
Yeah. I listen. I just really like the game. I just think it's neat.
I
Also,
just think it's neat.
I just think it's neat. And also, there will be 16 episodes. The VODs are in the process of being published. So yeah, 16 episodes, about 2.5 hours, sometimes 3 hours each. Yeah, yeah, it. We've spent a lot of our lives, uh, in Gallipoli. That's for certain.
Right, for sure. All right. I just updated my name. I don't know if that will show up on the video, but hopefully it will not disrupt it.
Mhm,
Yeah, so last time I had you on, you had not yet recorded the end of the series. I think that happened after we recorded. So
mhm.
first off, congratulations for making it through the end of all six missions.
Thank
Um,
you.
uh, and well, we're going to keep this like as spoiler light as possible
Okay.
for
All
everyone
right.
that wants to it, but we want to tease and get people to watch the whole series, which I admit I have not yet done. Um, I am further along than the last time we talked.
Mhm.
There's it's a world of too much media for sure. Um, but how do you feel? Like, how did it feel to like get to the end, to like reach the final conclusion, right? I mean, like, is it like I don't know. I could put words in your mouth, but I
Yeah,
won't. Tell me what it was like.
it's it's definitely something. This is the it's the first game that I've run that I've come to like a definitive actual like end planned end. And I think this is really the only like tabletop game that I've played in that had like a definitive end. So it's kind of surreal. It's like we spent all this time, we put all this investment in, it kind of stretched out just because of scheduling issues that were going on, but like wow, no, we made this, and I really think we landed the plane. Like
Hmm.
I just remember kind of stopping the recording at the very end of the last episode. We kind of all looked at each other and were like, wow, I'm happy with this. This is
Hmm.
good. So yeah, yeah, I think it's good. At least it's definitely an intense sort of game.
Yeah. I've I I have the up to the parts that I have watched. It is yeah, it's intense. You all like are all of you, all the you and the players, you're all leaning in, and the I don't know that like moment early on when the first time somebody was like you were like, "Oh, by the way, there's these card mechanics where like you could do something and then you kind of explain it and then they sacrifice their cards and then you taking on the role of the narrator, you kind of took it further than the book kind of describes. Like the book is like, yeah, there's a narrator, right?
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
but you're like, no, no, no. I am the others. You are giving me the cards and I thank you. And you're like just such like flat, like, thank you for your memories. That adds so much performance, so much flavor to what's happening. So yeah, intense is the way you all played it for sure.
Yeah. Thank you for yeah, no, narrator or my little avatar of the narrator is definitely something that I was kind of iffy about at first, where I'm like, is that too much of like a, game master XP fiat thing? And then I asked my players, and they're like, no, we love it. They're awful. I'm like, you've got it, team. More terrible narrator who very specifically only ever takes what you offer them.
Right, right.
Yeah, so
Just
it's definitely been interesting having that sort of not just a game master, but that kind of like weird other otherworldly, like incomprehensible relationship with the characters too, because
mm.
there definitely ends up being like unique relationships between the narrator and all of them. It's like, how much of this are they actually, encountering? How much of this is in their heads? Like, yeah, no, it's definitely a really, really fun time.
Do you did you have the like I mean, obviously you have time because I assume you're doing like the editing of the video and that kind of stuff, uploading all that stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, are you like so you're able to see the content a couple times because you play it and then you edit it or whatever. So, um, are you like making notes of like everything that they've given up in that sense, and so that then you can like bring that back to them in other ways? Is that like is that was that part of your process? Because that seems like the a next step that you could take to really intensify what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. I have a little notebook, and for each of the soldiers, I had the card they gave up, why they gave it up, and
Hmm.
what it represented, whether that was injuries or phobias or memories, etc., etc. And like this interaction, I didn't really think too much of it at the time, but the very first card that was like burned and given up was one of the soldiers' ability to like love and have relationships.
Hmm.
And then I was like, oh, you gave the outer being the ability to love. Do you know how terrifying that is?
Ooh.
So we've kind of had the ongoing running theme of, oh no, the narrator loves you very much. And boy, if that isn't a terrible implication to think about, it's great.
Yeah, I mean that is definitely like what I have enjoyed so much about watching this actual play because it is so because you and your players have brought so much to it. It is sort of like playing it not as quote unquote intended, right? I mean, that's where the game, I mean, there's a whole other philosophy discussion
Mm-hmm.
that could be had about what is the game, right? And I very much believe that the game is in the play, not in the book, you know? So like
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
see the book tells you how to play the game, but the game is the play, not the product, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't make the games in that respect, right? Like Wedding Games publishes books that tell you how you could play the game, and then you are
Mm-hmm.
showing this way to play the game, which is not, which is part you and part your players and part the book and part the art and like it's like more than the sum of its parts, I guess, is kind of the feel that I get from it. When I'm watching you do something or add something or your players ask questions or whatever, it's like, oh yes, this I didn't write this. This isn't on page 17. This is great, So it's been a pleasure to watch like the this I don't even know what's going to happen, right? And I wrote
Mm-hmm.
a quarter of the core book, so it's fascinating in that respect.
Yeah, no, it's been great, and especially just being able to just even minor things. Like I actually ran Bones of the Dust pretty close to what was in the campaign dossier, honestly. Like I didn't really do too much shuffling. There was maybe I maybe introduced the main NPC way earlier than he's introduced in the main book, but like that's about it. It was, all things considered, the structure of the missions and the goals and the incidents all pretty much, came from the PDF. So,
Right.
or the book rather. So,
Sure.
yeah. Yeah. Presentation sure does a lot.
Well, it's yeah, I mean, I think of it, I think you've already mentioned since we pushed record, you've already mentioned that like you and all your players are like theater people, and so like um that perform and so I was thinking about it in those terms. Like there's the script that is
Hmm.
the list of the incidents, but then there's the night of the performance, which is like got all the actors and the lighting and like whatever. I mean, you're giving a performance of this particular set of prompts in a way. Um, uh, so anyway, I was thinking about like that. Did you think of it in those? I mean, do you think of it the same way, or is that sort of like not everything can be compared to theater, right? Like I should stop trying.
No, honestly, like, because we always knew that this was going to be a show for people to watch, we always sort of came at it from that aspect of like, you know, we are the actors, we, are performing this, and, the nature of a tabletop game being recorded is that it is unpredictable and things will happen that you didn't plan for in the script, that's for
Mm,
certain. And so I think that's kind of a really powerful part of actual plays is just that how are you rolling with it? Like how can you pick up your stumbles, well, quote unquote stumbles, right?
right.
It's like, oh wow, are these moments just the fact that a lot of them just come about so organically and grow out of that back and forth, give and take, call and response is just yeah, no, definitely I definitely kind of vibe with the theater performance analogy going on there.
Yeah. I it's I was just discussing with some people yesterday on one of the many RPG discords that I'm on,
Mhm.
about like my love for actual plays and that sort of like I mean obviously the storytelling part of it is part of what I like, right? Like um whether it's a campaign that I'm more familiar with because I helped organize the editing or whatever, or it's something that a game that I've never played before, and so like I don't know what's going to happen. The story is always interesting to hear and hear it unfold. But then I'm never I like it's not like I don't actually like listening to like fiction podcasts for whatever reason. Somehow the fact that I know that these are players playing a game makes it more accessible to me somehow, which is
Mhm.
a weird thing. I don't know that that's everyone's experience. Um, but then because then you see not only the story that they're telling and how they're performing their characters and stuff like that, but then they're also like, I love the discussions at the table where they'll be like, oh well, the odds of this happening are very unlikely, and they're like, is this a in are you having an in character discussion? It's like, no, this is players talking about like whether or not we should do this right now. And I love that kind of stuff because I mean, that is what it is like to play those games at the
Yeah.
table, is because you are mitigating those risks, and you're like, I'm going to try a big move here, everybody. Like, all right, well, if it works out, it'll be great. But if you fail, like we could all die. And you're like, yeah, well, I think it's what I think it's the only thing that makes sense. It's my
Mhm.
big swing. And any kind of game that has like resources you have to spend, or dice rolls or whatever, and then you hear those often. For me, a really great actual play will have like the clunk 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 dice sound
Yeah, yeah.
still in the actual play editing mix, and then you hear the reaction from the players about like, ooh, the dice
Mhm.
come up good or bad, it doesn't matter. Like, those I mean, that's I don't know. It's a weird levels of artifice and stuff like that. Obviously, I'm
Yeah,
listening to an
yeah.
experience that was recorded in the past in which people are portraying other events that happened at some imaginary time. There's a lot of layers, but I
Mhm.
appreciate them all. And so that is what I really um jazz on when I'm listening to an actual play. So I don't know. Respond, I guess. I didn't end with a question. I'm like,
Oh gosh, I am absolutely a sucker for that kind of like I guess I'd call it like just table talk, like when
hmm,
people strategize, that sort of thing. Honestly, some of my favorite moments and my favorite discussions are just the players sitting down and being like, okay, what's the plan? What are we gonna do? And just even having like these out of character, strategy jam sessions, or, you know, how are we gonna approach this encounter as tactically as possible is great. Or like you said about dice reactions, there is there are a few moments where particularly unlikely things happen.
hmm,
And listen, I really enjoy it when people, start to, it's like, oh, well, all I have to do is not roll this, or all I have to do
Oh,
is,
never say that. Never
roll
say that.
this. And I just go, but wouldn't it be really funny if, and
Hmm.
inevitably, yeah. Yeah, yeah, we had to take a few minutes after one of those because it was sometimes you just roll very incredibly badly 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And the fact that you're spending so much resource in never going home to do
Hmm.
those re-rolls, it's just, oh, it hits. It
Yeah.
definitely hits.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. The last time, yeah, it's for, I mean, I don't know. I could talk, the last time I played, there was a situation like that where there was like a river and it was like athletics rolls. So it's like just
Mhm.
jump across the river. That's all you have to do. And we're like, I don't know if we can make this, but we definitely do not want to fall in the river. So like there were multiple card spends to make sure that there were enough dice that we could cross the
Mhm.
stream. And it was like, I don't know why we like everybody was very certain that this was where the resources needed to be spent. And I don't know why we decided that, but it made it into a very tense little section there. Um, yeah, so yeah, I love that stuff. It's just, I don't know, it's like I guess it's the vicarious experience, right? Of like, if
Mhm.
this was my game and I was at the table, you'd be experiencing this drama of the mechanics at play.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so rather than cutting all of that out and just having it be a storytelling result in a like audio storytelling story experience, I want to hear the game in there.
Yeah.
Um, do you have any other, again, like we can keep it like we don't have to like tell you don't have to tell the end, right? But like
Mhm.
are there any particular moments from the whole series that you really want to highlight as like either like I mean, you've already talked about this, like everybody had to take a moment thing. Maybe
Mhm.
you don't have to tell what that is if you don't want to, but like, are there things that are like, oh, this was like, I really like this when my player did this, or I really like this when I thought to connect these two things, or what are some highlights that people have to look forward to from this big long, like we said, 16, 17 hour listening experience and
Mhm.
viewing. I mean, it's on YouTube, so you can watch all the
Yeah.
dice roll in the side of the screen.
Yeah, the dice go, you see all the successes, you see our faces and cameras. It's the whole hog. Um yeah, gosh. There is a certain point at the end of one of the missions where you encounter like a number of pretty dangerous cultist leaders who have access to some very interesting whispers. And, you know, a lot of the time whispers can be very like pragmatic from like a gameplay perspective, right? Like, this will you get an advantage of some sort, whether that's damage or terrain control or something else, something to change your specific experience on the battlefield. But what I really like about Bones in the Dust is that the Whisper Path, Master's Favors, has some whispers that really could only be feasibly cast by an NPC,
Yeah, it's
right?
sort of an NPC
Yeah,
focused path.
exactly. Like, no, none of your soldiers are gonna like wait a month to bury something in order to curse someone, right? But like being able to utilize one of those basically effectively GM only whispers, listen, extinguish memory. That's all I'm
Hmm.
gonna say. And it really kind of turned a whole chunk of the unit around. Like it changed so much about the characters and their interactions with one another and their relationships and just so good. So good.
All right. Well, I'll have to look out for that. That's exciting.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Anything else you want to say about the series? I mean, I'm sure we could talk about the series some more, but we should talk about some other things. Is there anything else you want to say about about the Never Going Home, not Never Going Home, but the Bones in the Dust campaign that you've put together that play the actual play. You know, is there anything else you want to say about
Yeah.
it? Uh,
Um, yeah, I listen, so much happened, and like each mission was its own individual like clawing of tooth and nail for survival. And how do we process, how do we exist now in a world where things such as this can happen? How do we protect other people? It's just the relationships in particular between my player characters was just, they're all very good. They're excellent actors, and it just really feels real. Like you get that gallows soldier humor, like you have all that going on. And it's
mm,
yeah, like I in particular, I do a lot of research, and I like getting more into the weeds when it comes to the actual historical stuff. So I don't know, it really feels like despite the horrors and all that, feels like there's kind of like a level of verisimilitude, all things considered, which is kind of blows me away. Like every time I'd be rewatching that VOD before I upload it, I'm like, wow, this is, man. Sorry, I know that's a little vague, but it's just it's a lot of emotions to fit into too few words, I guess.
sure. No,
Um,
I think that's pretty fascinating because like having talked to uh like I'm going to assume because you haven't mentioned it before that you are not a veteran of any sort of armed services, but like
no, I'm not.
having talked to people who have worked on the game or told me that they appreciate the game who are, you know, they're like there's just these things that are unexpressible that this game kind of captures, and it's like, well, it's wild because nobody that worked on it was has is a veteran. You know, nobody that the initial
Mm,
group of people who worked on it are not are simulating those experiences, you know, imagining what those experiences are like. But then for them to hit a chord or whatever I'm fascinated by that. And then hearing you say that, like, I can't even talk about it. There's so much happened. It's like that's what people said or didn't say
yeah.
after the real war, you know. And not that playing an actual play for the internet is at all comparable to like trying to invade the beaches of at
Well,
Gallipoli, but
right.
like the it's gratifying, I guess, to hear that like the verisimilitude that we're trying to create with the game that it works that way, you know, that it
Mm,
the that scarce resource and the push forward at all cost kind of part of the war that I understand from like historical terms and reading like
mm,
tomes of history books comes through into somebody's play experience that like you would almost have like, oh, I'm a veteran of this campaign in fiction, you know, and I can't talk about it, man. You
yeah,
just had to have
yeah,
been there, you know. Is that like I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too broadly, but like I'm fascinated by that. The hearing your reaction to it is like it's like you're almost saying, "Oh, you just had to have been there. I can't explain it to you," you know.
yeah. And
Um,
it's just like there are like certain points where the players are off having a conversation in character, and I'm just sitting there and I'm listening to them. I'm like, oh God, this could have been just a real conversation that somebody had back then. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it just, something about the environment of the game and like the mechanics of it really seem to glom together into that kind of experience, like that
yeah.
tension. And yeah, no, it's definitely something. It's the game is a very special game to me. I enjoy it quite a bit, just a bit. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it helps when you commit to the bit, you know, there's a in that respect, you know, it's like a yeah, it's a game about experiencing horrible things and being changed by it. So like
Mhm.
if that's the story you're willing to tell, then, you know, there's a lot of rules to make that happen and, you know, a lot of vibes to make that happen.
Mhm.
Uh all right. Well, we're not done talking about Never Going Home yet because I think it would be fun to do a little bit of like brainstorming here with you. I think. uh, without having actually consulted the text. I think we're supposed to do some solo rules for the this as
That
part of this
sounds about
campaign.
right.
Um,
Yeah, that
so
seems
how to
familiar.
put those together is something that we've left. We have to get the books done, and they're in layout right now. I can show you
Hmm.
after we get done. I just posted earlier today at the time of recording some early views of the layout of the books. So the books are in layout. Almost all of the stretch goals are completed. Obviously, then those will have to go to layout and editing and layout. Um, but then these solo rules are kind of out there, and like I think we're supposed to do them. And even if we didn't get to that stretch goal, maybe we should do them anyway. Um,
Yeah.
so as somebody who has played a lot of this with other people, and I have been interviewing people who've played solo games a bunch this year. I kind of want to talk to you about it. Maybe we can spitball some ideas here, live to tape about like what
Hmm.
are some good ideas. Do you play solo games? Do you like solo games?
Um, yeah, I have played a few of them. It's mostly been like solo, more like journaling
Mm-hmm.
focused
Mm-hmm.
games. So like a lot of the more like contemplative kind of narrative, very narrative, character driven type thing. I've never
Right.
really played, something that's been mechanically dense, I guess, in a
Mm.
solo game. So but yeah, no, I enjoy them. I like writing in general, so it's always a good time.
Yeah, I also really appreciate the like the solo or the journaling side of the solo game
Hmm.
experience because more so than the like you're keeping track of everything on a resource management style character sheet where you're like adjusting things and checking your spell, not your spell list, but your ingredients list or your
Right.
resources and you've got your skills written down there and so you're can I do this thing? Let me check my character sheet. I guess it's sort of like the character sheet based solo play versus a journal based solo play where you're
Hmm.
just sort of writing what happens and you may have stats that you wrote down on the first page of the journal, but like it's not they're not as important as the experience of describing everything. So I
Yeah.
definitely tend more toward the journalist side. So when I think of like, oh, never going home the solo game, like the thing that I want to do is like, okay, there's like one thing that I would like to see out of this is
Hmm.
like, I mean, the core book has Alfred's journal in it, and Alfred is describing his experiences in the war and seeing the like first encounter with his first encounter with supernatural forces. And I think he hears a little bit of rumors about the start of the whole thing and stuff like that. And that's just you read those stories. So like in my mind, the ideal never going home experience would be like a way for you to create your version of Alfred's journal,
Mm.
like so that you would
Okay.
get
Yeah, yeah,
done with the
yeah.
solo game and you would have created like this journal by a soldier, whatever you named your soldier, Francois's journal, it would be Francois's
Hmm.
journal, right? And you've got those prompts that would have you write those same sort of discovery of what's going on and loss of memory and all that kind of stuff. Um, that's definitely one version to do it, but I think
Yeah.
a lot of players of Never Going Home are more into the crunchy side and would maybe more appreciate like something that's like just a way to navigate missions without a whole unit of people. It would be almost like
Yeah.
a two-pager alternate rule set that's just like here's how you survive all the same missions just by yourself. And that'd be on the other side where it's more the character sheet
Mhm.
based, it's more about the rules. So those are my two big ideas. Where do
Yeah.
you I mean, obviously, well, what do you think? What do you think about either one? Like, what's your
Um, I definitely I also tend to lean towards the more narrative aspect. I did have an idea knocking around. It wasn't necessarily like never going home, like specifically, but it would fit the setting is kind of written writing letters home,
hmm,
if that makes sense,
yeah.
and kind of using that to navigate like what's going on, like what do you say, what do you not say, um,
Hmm,
how like you don't get responses, what does that mean to you? Yeah, that sort of deal. I think kind of that dichotomy between that, the experience of what is going on in the front versus what you left behind and ostensibly what you're trying to protect. I think that's like such a Well, I mean, like it's World War One. People still signed up for, Queen and country and patriotism and all those noble traits of man. And yeah, it's I don't know. I just think that would be in particular something interesting to maybe an interesting take on it. And in terms, sorry, go ahead.
No, I really like that idea. Is like sort of like you could have prompts that sort of describe, you could almost combine the two, right? So you've got like sort of a mechanical sort of process that determines like what happens, but then at the end
Yeah.
of that, you write a letter home where you're like gently encouraged or perhaps prohibited from writing about any of that stuff. And
Hmm.
so, like, you as the player have gone through this thing and you defeated the monster and you took all this damage, and then you write home about, like, I don't know, birds and trees and stuff like that, because that's the only thing of your experience that you're like, you're protecting the home, whoever you're sending
Yeah.
the letter to, you're protecting them from what you've experienced. And so there's like this tension in you as a player between like what you're doing, but what you're saying about what you're doing. That there's some interesting things there. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's where you were going with that, but
Yeah, pretty much. Because I mean, like, the whole conceit of the game is you leave yourself behind once you experience these things in, however way that manifests. So, having to make your character confront that is just very interesting to me. So, yeah.
yeah, I yeah, I don't know. Of course, the other idea, like obviously you would want to bring in the cards and the dice, I think would want to be still part of it. I almost imagine like whether you do more prompt journaling stuff or you sort of like imagine the deck of cards as like a mission. I definitely think
Hmm.
the solo play version of Never Going Home is you sitting there with the deck, and the deck is sort of like your opponent in a way. You have to get through the deck somehow, or maybe not a whole deck of 52 cards, but like
Hmm.
a stack of cards. You separate out some cards and like this is the stuff I've got to get through, and you
Yeah.
go through it. Definitely want to include the playing cards because that's so key to the Never Going Home play table, you know.
Yeah. There was something I was kind of knocking around, because, you know, when you say solo game, it's all right, you have that like narrative journaling experience, and then you have we adapt the rules so that you can like play through a regular mission,
Right.
but with those. And the cards I was thinking, first off, the suit theming like
Hmm.
would be like really important and all that. Um, but it would be like, I guess, encounter or outcome types, I'd suppose, because I don't know, it's difficult. Because like thinking about it, so much about Never Going Home is managing your dwindling resources and like that sense of desperation and the fact that yeah, um, this could end at any time with just a stray bullet. And yeah, it's difficult. I guess I'm not quite sure the best way to sort of implement that resource management,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
Right.
Uh,
Uh, I, so I one I think it might be one thing that occurs to me is like sort of like because you mentioned the different suits, so it's like
mm-hmm.
almost like this is going to be a mission that is because clubs is the obstacles, the physical
Yeah, yeah,
barrier
yeah.
type stuff. So like this is a mission that's got six clubs in it. So take your deck of cards, put six clubs in a stack, but then it's also going to make you confront some stuff. So put three diamonds in the deck too. So you've got this 9 card deck of
Mm-hmm.
six clubs and three diamonds, and those are the things you're going to navigate through. And then that's your like mission simulator, right? And so then you have a list for the mission that is like
Okay.
um the first club is this, the first heart is this, whatever. It lists out what all those cards are going to be, but you don't know the order that they're going to come out in. And so then you have maybe another set of cards that you separate out from the deck that's your cards. So probably more than like the 4 to 5 to 6 cards. Let's
Hmm.
be realistic, the 2 to 3 to 4 cards that most soldiers have
Yeah.
as player characters. And so then you've got to maybe like giving up one of those cards is like an automatic success of any one of the in this example that I'm inventing
Hmm.
right now, there's 9 challenges you got to get through, and like you start with 4 cards, so like you can auto win on 4 of them because you can discard a card, and
Right.
then but then like there's that still leaves 5 challenges you actually have to pass with your dice rolls. So like you're flipping out the cards and like looking at the solo play sheet that tells you what's happening next based on the cards that are coming out of the deck, and then how do you resolve them? Did you do it with a stealth roll? Did you do it with a thing, or did you spend one of your limited cards to do it? And it's sort of like, I don't know, if you're in a I don't know, that's sort of like that's a very mechanical way to set up, like
Yeah.
we were talking about, a solo play that has all the same themes and uses you could theoretically use the same character sheet that you develop
Hmm.
just as the normal character creation rules, um, to try and assess some of these problems. I don't know. That's definitely one way to do it, but would bring in the cards, and then you could,
Yeah.
like a lot of games that are solo games, they're like more mechanical, and they're like, and then you can write about it if you want. And so it
Right.
would bring in that solo element as well, or the journaling element as well.
I actually did find, apparently I had notes about when I was thinking about this. I did save them and I did find them.
Oh
And
wow,
past me was like, I don't like past me was like, I'm not sure how I would do it for existing missions, but maybe there's a way to generate missions for oneself.
yeah,
So kind of the idea was you generate your missions by drawing the cards and you have like a table, right?
hmm,
So you would draw your cards, roll the get the table, and then like thematically it's like, okay, what mission do clubs and spades represent, what kind of mission do hearts and diamonds represent, and then you would roll for incidents, what kind of an incident or challenge would then your roll be for the other suit, and if an antagonist, what kind of antagonist like would you see in terms of what suit you rolled up. So that was also another thing, and like corruption table as well in terms of cards. Yeah, yeah, no.
no, it's similar to
A
what
lot
I
of tables
was.
though.
Well, it is a lot
Yeah.
of tables, but I mean, that's sort of the solo play experience, right? You have to, because if you're generating the story for yourself, you don't have the
Mm,
narrator who's got the like incidents listed out. You kind of have
yeah.
to do, I'm thinking about stuff like I played Umbra by Anna Blackwell, which is it's like a sci-fi mission base building simulator thing where
Hmm.
you're constantly like excavating new rooms on a moon base, and like when you go into a new area you draw cards and you look at a table, and like if it was the 7 of hearts, this is what you find in that new area of the moon base, and you can expand, or not, it's not a moon base, the moon base is at the top of the page, but you're excavating down,
Hmm.
you find caves and they're full of gems or monsters or resources, the resources or monsters, depending on how deep down in the moon you go. Um, so they like looking at tables and consulting tables is very much part of a lot of the solo thing. So yeah, I like
Hmm.
the idea that like I almost like the idea that you take your deck of cards and you lay out your missions first. So you lay out all the cards first, so you know
Hmm.
the whole scope of the mission. And so then you're looking at it and you're like, how am I going to survive this? And then you
Yeah.
kind of go through it. I don't know. There's rather than being surprised by every card, you can kind of be have it laid out. It's almost like an expanded version of the journey in that respect. This journey is
Yeah.
going to
Ooh,
cost
yeah.
you, at the upfront, this is going to cost you 3 hearts and 1 spade or whatever to do this
Hmm.
journey. So then you lay that out, and then you how am I going to resolve it is sort of, there's still, I guess, unknowns if you're rolling from a dice table and stuff like that. So
Hmm.
I don't know. There's some good
No,
ideas here. Go ahead.
yeah, I like that a lot. The sort of like pre-planning, like seeing the mission ahead of time, because at least the way I run combat in NGH is that my players always know what they have to hit. in order to, do damage. So they can always like go in on that strategic, okay, is it better to do this? Is it better for me to just roll my whole pool? Is it better for me
Hmm.
to, do XYZ, and like running all those tactics in their heads? And I think having that sort of, more transparent of this is what you need to do is at least for me, it's kind of part of the game, and I like that strategy part of it. And so I really kind of lean towards the okay, this is what you have to do. Figure out how you solve it, or figure out what you're willing to do to solve it, basically.
Yeah, what you're willing to do. I like that wording.
Yeah.
I've been taking notes here of our discussion. I think this is great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, I think that's pretty good. I think there's some real potential here. I don't know that who knows what this will look like when we finally, we being like Wet Ink Games, but like,
Mhm.
you may be pulled in to help with some of this. You're a you're pretty good at working with this game. Your ideas are valuable.
Thank you. Thank you.
Uh, uh, but I think okay. We've talked about never going home a bunch,
Mhm.
but that's not the only thing in your life, I'm sure. What?
Surprisingly,
Yeah,
surprisingly, right?
right. I mean, I don't want to like, I feel a little bit like, yes, please talk about my things some more, you know.
Mhm.
But what else are you up to? What have you been doing since the end of your live stream process? Like,
Mhm.
what other new creative projects you might be involved in? Like, what's going on in Atwas world?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you about like the same night that we, hit stop on that final recording. I looked at my bookshelf and I was like, okay, but which dossier do I want to run next? So,
Yeah.
personally, yeah, I've been kind of looking at we decided to take some time off because the game is intense, but in the future we hope to do Blood on the Snow. The last of Imperial Russia
Hmm.
campaign, which like I speak Russian.
Mm,
Like my family is from my mother's side is from the former Soviet Union, Ukraine, and all that. So I'm very familiar with a lot of that history and that sort of part, like the Russian Civil War, the Reds versus the Whites,
yeah.
is something that I'm pretty well studied on. And yeah, I've been polishing up on my language skills. I don't get to do so all that often, but I'm like, ooh, but consider I could actually be reading primary sources for this. So yeah, that's been one big aspect, which has been yeah, no, just sort of looking to the next campaign there and trying to get a cast going and all that sort of thing.
Oh, well,
But
that's very exciting. Because that's certainly a dynamic time and place to have, and then to have the personal connection there as well. That's yeah, that sounds great.
mhm. Yeah, I was talking to my players about it, and one of them looked at me. It's like, I'm not doing a Russian accent. I'm like, I promise I won't make fun of you. Like, pinky promise. It'll be fine. You'll be good. Um, but yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Um, also, uh, I've sort of kind of been homebrewing a tabletop setting. Kind of like, I guess you would say, more of like a hex crawl vibe sort of thing. But it would be Fallout, like the Fallout universe. So like my players and I are like really big fans of the Fallout series, particularly New Vegas and that sort of aspect, like those politics and stuff. And I was like, man, I'm not the biggest fan of like the Fallout game systems that we've had so far. Like I took a look at them, like this isn't exactly what I want for a Fallout game. And then one of my players is like, why don't you just use the +1 system? I'm like, now that you mention it, why don't I just use the +1 system? Like, there are a number of resources that you need to manage, in a wasteland apocalypse. There
Right.
are horrors, there are, like, even if you're not giving up parts of yourself, like, your gear is just as valuable, right? Maybe your cards represent, like,
Mm,
your gear, your medicine, your food, your ability to survive and thrive, even. So I've been percolating on that a bit, being like, okay, special, and then what do I do, like, with the dice pools and stuff. But the main thing is, I've been doing a lot of looking on Google Maps because
oh,
Fallout is set in the
but
United States,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
right.
I'm like, you know what? Nah,
But
we're gonna do the Fallout Sonora. I'm doing it in Phoenix.
well, first off, I love homebrew. So like
Mm-hmm.
this is awesome. Yes, please bash the +1 around to make it fit a new setting. That sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not SRD'd out there, so if you would you and we talked about this a little bit before already, but yeah, somebody else owns Fallout 3, so this will be very unofficial
Mm-hmm.
if you put this together. This is for private games only. Um,
Exactly. Exactly.
but it sounds great and fitting those themes in. And then you were talking about that set in the United States. It's like, yeah, I mean, and you live in the West, like you
Yeah.
could be as specific as you want, but I know like I think it's like it's not just set in like America. It is, as far as I know, like Vegas.
Like
Well, I guess there's one
specific
set in.
cities.
I
Yeah.
guess one of them was in the DC, so it's not just the West, but like
Yeah.
a lot of it takes place in my knowledge of Fallout. It's a lot of
Hmm.
deserts, a lot of like stuff that's out there in the West of the United States.
Yeah. I'm kind of like also a Fallout, like, I wouldn't say like mega fan, but like pretty big fan. So it's yeah, mostly California, then you have DC for 3, Boston for 4, 76 is the West Virginia area. And
Okay, so they went
we've
way because like the first, like I said, I the first one is feels like it is set in California, is like the
yeah,
first one,
yeah.
or like Northern California maybe, or
Hmm.
Nevada or something. I mean, it's very much deserts and stuff like that is what it feels like.
Yeah. And the game that I like most from the series is the one is New Vegas, the one set
Hmm.
in and around Las Vegas. So I'm like, well, canonically, there's not really much said about Phoenix at all. And like, shoot, I live here. There's a whole lot of just weird shit to just find. Like, I'm on Atlas Obscura, just finding
Ah, that's
bizarre
right.
buildings, strange things. Like,
Holes in rocks that you could potentially hide in,
yeah,
unusual formations in the
yeah,
you've got I mean, you got to put in like somebody's going to find the 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 mine out in Superstition Mountains, right? I mean that like
yeah,
don't
exactly.
no matter that
Oh
it's like
God.
probably made up in the legend in the first place, but like you
Hmm.
could put it in your fiction. Why not?
Yeah. Oh God. And my spouse, he grew up in the area, so I'll be like talking to him about my ideas, and he's like, there's a National Guard base under there, right? I'm like, there is? He's like, yeah, you should add that. Or what about the nuclear power station? You should do something with that. I'm like, God, you're
Oh,
so right.
yeah.
Um,
There's a nuclear power station in the desert. It's a wild, wild place out there in
yeah,
Phoenix.
yeah. And oh God. So one of my favorite weird things that I found is there is a southwestern cryptid
Hmm.
local to Arizona that is a camel, like a feral camel, like the Black Camel or something like that.
Okay.
And it
Okay.
turns out that
This is the Hajj Ali and
Mhm.
his importation of camels, right? Is it
Yeah,
connected to
and
that?
yes.
Okay,
It,
okay.
it was World War I, right? Where they're like, have we
I
considered camels for the deserts?
I
Let's train.
I I I don't remember the dates. I think it was
Hmm.
earlier. I think it was more like 18. I think it was after the Mexican American War when America acquired that
Mm-hmm.
territory, or invaded, conquered, whatever the how you depending on your side of the line. But the I think then they were like, now how are we going to control the desert? So then it's like 1840s,
Mm-hmm.
1850s that they were trying to figure it out. With that particular person who brought the camels over.
Yeah.
But you know,
Yeah, no, people would just way after this, they'd report seeing, a horrible like black beast that out in the desert, and people like think it's just like an escaped camel or something.
could
So I'm like,
be.
oh, camel mutants, writing that
Camel.
down, writing that down.
Yeah, I'm gonna write it down too. That's a good idea. I had not heard of this one before, but I accept it. I accept it fully.
Hmm.
Uh, I
So
lived
yeah.
I lived out there for a brief amount of time,
My
a number of
condolences.
years ago, and so we went to Quartzsite and we went saw
Hmm.
the pyramid monument with the camel on top, and we saw the some of the different like desert intaglios and stuff like that. We went
Hmm.
out to they're in the middle of nowhere, and people have arranged desert forms, human forms, and animal forms in the middle of nowhere. Um, they're still in the middle of nowhere. They were probably even
Hmm.
more in the middle of nowhere whenever they were carved or not carved, arranged, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff out there. So
Yeah, definitely a lot of content to mine for just weird absurdism that is Fallout and that sort of
yeah.
sense of humor. So, yeah, one of my players joked about, so is there going to be like a golf-based economy? Because, dear viewer, if you are not aware, the Phoenix metro area has so many golf courses, just an absurd amount of golf courses. Like, oh my God, zoom out on Google Maps and it's like, fellas, you do realize that this is like a desert, right? But yeah,
Desert,
no,
right?
golf
That,
is golf is huge over here. So I'm like, got to do something with golf now, I
yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, just all sorts of funky weirdness,
So
and yeah.
it's the only places that are habitable in the apocalypse because they have all of that built-in water supply. So like all settlements are these weird oblong shapes that are the former greens of all the golf courses.
Oh my God,
Uh,
I love that.
maybe.
But also, consider. So they're called sand traps, right?
Oh, yeah.
How do you feel about giant mutant burrowing owls?
I like it. I like it.
That they're now flightless. They they mostly make their nests around golf courses and stuff because hey, it's easy digging.
Yeah, I imagine like burrowing owls are like, I don't know, they're like small,
They're they're
but
they're tiny.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
little baby
So I'm
fellas.
imagining like these have grown to like be
Hmm.
like, I for whatever reason I'm thinking of a capybara, which isn't like capybaras are like, 100 pounds or
Hmm.
something like that. They're a, a big they're like this big, but an
Yeah.
owl that's that big and that muscular that's then like waiting at the bottom of a sand trap to like bite you with its beak or
Hmm.
whatever is yeah, that's great. That's approved weirdness from me.
Yes.
Not that you need my
Excellent.
approval, but no, that's
It's still
great.
nice to have. Yeah. So that's mostly what I've been doing. I've been in a few games that some of my friends run, a lot of them casually. I've been playing some Delta Green, been playing some Dragonbane.
Nice.
Yeah, uh, been playing some D&D 5e for a friend of mine's stream, just, casual D&D
You
stuff.
you it's a lot. You played a lot. How many games a week are you playing?
Um,
Or monthly or
well,
whatever? Like,
yeah. So it's like every other Monday, we tend to have the between. Every other Tuesday, we're playing a Dungeons of Dragonheim. It's like a new expansion that came out for 5e that's very like horror. It's basically like what if Chernobyl, but in D&D, and
okay.
the radiation is all magic and terrible. So doing that every other week or so. Um Wednesdays, yeah, that's either my Delta Green or my Dragonbane game. And then Thursdays, I have a streamed game that I participate in, and then Saturdays I sometimes do stuff. This is
That's
basically my
that's like a
hobby, I
it's like a
guess.
full
That's
working
just
week. Like what are you doing there? This is amazing.
I don't know. I listen, I moved out here when I was an adult. It's hard to meet new people, so it's
Mm.
like I get a lot of my socializing done in game, and a lot of my friends are into tabletop, and so
I
it
that
just,
there you
yeah,
go. What's one more
yeah,
game when you've already playing five a week? Like that's amazing.
yeah. No, it's a good time, and it is nice to have the majority of them be personal games. That's for certain.
Sure.
Because I was in like multiple shows a week at some point, like a couple years ago, and that was just difficult. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean that's yeah. That was what we were talking about at the beginning. Like it's you're on, you bring a
Hmm.
different energy than if you're just like, we're just
God,
here for our weekly
exactly.
game. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Uh, all right. Well, we talked about everything that was on our list to talk about. That
Hmm.
all sounds great. Is there any final thoughts, any wrap up? Like what's I don't know, what's a piece of like desert weirdness you want to direct people to? I don't know. Where can people find you? Any of your shows that you used to be on, or the Critical
Hmm.
Failsafe show we've been talking about? Like, give us a bunch of places where people can find more from you if they want to on the internet.
Got it. Um, so you can find Bones in the Dust, the campaign, which has wrapped up. It is finished. It is complete. You can find that on the Critical Failsafe YouTube channel, and you can find all of the Critical Failsafe links at critfailsafe.com. So I made a website. It's a
That's
redirect, but it's something. So there's that. The D&D 5e game that I play for stream. It's a Breath of the Wild inspired D&D game, so it's a lot of like hex exploration and stuff like that. That can be found at D6 Tricks on YouTube and Twitch. And then as for myself, uh, but honestly, my biggest presence is like Discord, which I'm atwas. But you can also find me on Twitter or X, atwas stage, so ATWASTAGE, and then same on Tumblr, where I occasionally post things that I like write or draw, stuff like that. So yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Awas, to talk to me about like never going home and all your
Mhm.
big ideas for the that you're working on, uh, uh, and game jamming with me a little bit. I love to
Yeah.
stream, not stream of consciousness. I don't know what word I was searching for. It's gone. But
Volley.
storm probably
Bounce.
is what I was
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
for.
yeah.
Brainstorm. Uh, well, anyway, thank you so much, and we'll see you on the internet. And
Yeah, aces. Thank you for having me.
perfect. And we want to thank everyone who's watched this video. Give us what other creepy stuff should be in a Sonoran desert version of Fallout 7, like whatever. What should it be there? Put it in the comments. Interaction with the video. Thank you so much for watching.